In this video, we are going to talk about 30 listening activities you can do with your Spanish classes or with your world language classes. Make sure you stick around to the end because I'm going to share a really simple way that has them all organized for you to keep them all in mind while you're lesson planning, rather than seeing a bunch of really cool ideas thinking, oh my gosh, yeah, I'd love to do that with my classes, and then totally forgetting about it and never actually trying any of them. Sound good? Let's get right into it. Hey, it's Ashley, aka Señorita Spanish, where I provide easy to use resources to use while you're lesson planning to save you time and energy. If you're new here, I just want to make sure you know that everything that I mentioned in this video will be linked in the description box below. So if you see an idea that you really like and you want to try it, but you're not sure about it, you want to hear more about it, everything will be linked below. Let's chat about listening activities for our students. First, we're going to talk about the source for the listening activities, like what they're actually going to be listening to. We'll talk about different options for you and resources for where you can find listening activities to do with your students. Then we'll talk about the activities themselves. Once you have a piece of material for students to listen to, what are you going to do with it? Sound good? Let's get right into it. First, I want to talk to you about the source of the listening. There's a few different options, and I don't necessarily feel like one source of listening is better than the other, which might be a controversial opinion. I don't know. That's definitely something that could be talked about. But let's just say there's a lot of different things that you could use to provide listening material for your students, and I don't know that there's necessarily one that's like perfect and others that are just terrible in comparison, you know? I do think it's really important to include a mix of the options that we are going to discuss. So option one, and probably the most utilized option, us, the teachers. The teacher is a great source of audio input for the students. If you are focusing on spending 90% of your class time in the target language, you are already providing a ton of listening activities for your students just by them being present in your classes. And I know like having your students be present is easier said than done. But hey, you're putting it out there for them anyways. If you want to learn more about 90% time in the target language, make sure you check out my blog post on it about how I talk to students, parents, and guardians about it, especially during like back to school night or conferences. If they are like, why are you speaking so much Spanish? My student doesn't understand Spanish. That's why they're taking your class. That's the blog post for you if you've got those kinds of parents and students in your classes. Option two are other teachers. So just because they're getting input from you doesn't necessarily mean they can't get input from other teachers, especially if you have colleagues that you work closely with. This is a really, I think, underutilized resource, right? So talk to your friend, call up your friend and ask them to swap recordings with you. Say, hey, I want my students to listen to this. Would you just record this for me really quickly? And then tradesies, right? Record something for them, or maybe you record something that both of your classes are going to do, and then next week they'll record something both of your classes are going to do. I think this in particular is a really great option because there's something to be said for people who know how to talk to novices, especially if you're working in the lower levels. Like teachers understand language learners and what that looks like. So when you get another teacher to create material for your classes, you know that it's not going to just be like zoom so fast that they can't keep up, right? Which is panic inducing for our novices. But it's also nice to let them hear other voices, right? So it's not just you all the time, the teacher providing input for them, if you can rely on teacher friends. I also highly recommend the Novice Listening Library that Laura Sexton started. I have a blog post where I sing her praises because I think it's a fantastic idea. If you have not seen it yet, you need to A, go check it out, and B, go contribute to it so it can help other people too. Essentially what it is a bunch of teachers from all over the place where they've recorded little videos about specific common topics that we often talk to our novices about. So fantastic resource, tons of different videos, and I personally think that's amazing paired, we'll get into that. We'll get into what to do with them in a little bit. Option three for where to find materials for your students to listen to, each other. And I feel like this is probably the one that most people are going to be like, I don't know about that, Ashley. Like you said, none of these were better than the others. I think it's important for our students to talk to each other. And part of that talking, part of that communication is listening to each other. I also think this is a really good way for them to learn how to negotiate meaning. I don't know about you, but I've had students in the past whose pronunciation has just been like so bad that it's really hard to understand them. And so I'd be like, not really sure how to handle giving that feedback without like shutting them down or making their effective filter go super high. So sometimes when you're paired, like they're working in pairs or in small groups with each other, and they realize that their classmates can't understand them because they're saying a word and it's just wrong. There's not another word for it, right? Sometimes they say a word and it's like, that's not what that word sounds like. And their classmates are like, what are you trying right? They're asking for their help, they're trying to understand them, they're negotiating meaning, and getting that feedback from a peer is a lot less stressful for some students than, having them speak out in front of the class and me being like, I have no idea what you're trying to say, that kind of thing. So conversations in pairs or small groups is really great for that kind of output, but also for that listening practice and negotiating meaning that's coming in. Option 4, and I feel like you're probably like, where's this one been? Obviously this one is coming, we know it's coming, why haven't you gotten to it yet? The internet. Option 4 is the internet. That's a great source of listening material, and it's a source of so much listening material that it's almost overwhelming and, actually kind of is overwhelming. Could be from native speakers, could be from other learners, could be from teachers who are recording videos for their students that you happen to find and use, or maybe you're in that novice listening library that I mentioned earlier. All of these kinds of things. Thank goodness that in this social media era, this YouTube everything, blog, vlog, everything, there's recordings on pretty much every topic you could imagine and want to use with your students. The trick is that they're not always super novice friendly, right? So maybe we're going to take out clips, we're going to change the task that we ask our students to do with them, but the material is there for students to listen to, and that in and of itself is a gold mine. My personal faves are YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. YouTube is really nice because you can affect the speed of the playback, right? You can use that option setting on that gear and slow it down, sometimes just enough for students to not, get that panic reaction when they hear somebody talking like this super duper fast, right? That's really helpful. Instagram and TikTok are really, really nice because they are generally shorter pieces of content, which not only is a little less overwhelming for students, but just because it's a shorter piece of content does not mean we cannot get just tons and tons and tons of mileage out of it. If you've seen my video on Movie Talk, you know that we can take a 60-second long video and we use it for a whole lesson. We could even use it for a whole unit, believe it or not. So just because the video you found on Instagram or TikTok is short doesn't mean you cannot use it for a lot of content in your classes. If your school does not allow access to Instagram or TikTok on your school's Wi-Fi network, I do have a tutorial for you on how to save those videos to your computer so that way you can use them for educational content in your classroom. I will put a link to that tutorial in the description of this one, so that way you can go ahead and use that content for listening in your classes. Okay, in this category, right, option 4, I would also include music. Music is a must for listening in my classes. If you've seen my daily routines video, you know I love Musica Miracules, but I also just use it throughout the class. I'm getting ahead of myself again. Activities are coming. Quick question, do you feel like your students benefit just as much from listening to you as they do from listening to a recording? Let me know in the comments. Yes, do you feel like they're equal? Do you feel like, no, not all listening is created equal? Like listening to me is better because I can, adjust the speed, adjust the vocab, adjust the language for them? Or do you feel like it's better to use a source that is a native speaker talking about, an authentic resource, right? A native speaker speaking for other speakers of that language, for that community specifically, right? Let me know what you think. I said at the beginning of the video, right, I don't think that there's necessarily a gold bar. I think it's really important for us to include a variety of listening resources for our students, but I would love to know your thoughts. If you think that one of these sources of listening material is better or worse than any of the others, comment below and let me know your thoughts. I can't wait to hear from you. Okay, let's talk about the activities you can do with a listening. There are a ton, and I'm just going to try and go through them really fast so I'm not wasting your time. But if I go too fast and you have questions about any of them, just drop a comment below and let me know, and I will help explain that activity in more detail for you. Number 1, we're going to start with 4 corners. Mis Clases Locas has a blog post on how she does this with a twist. What it is you are going to do questions that are multiple choice. Each corner of your classroom, A, B, C, and D, right, or true and false if you wanted to divide your room into halves. But you read a question that is multiple choice, students move to the corner of the classroom to answer the question. 2, ball toss. I have a whole video where I explain this one. You have a ball, students ask a question to a classmate, then they toss the ball to the other classmate, the student catches the ball, answers the question, and asks a different classmate. 3 is card talk. I talk about this in my back to school, first day of school video, but you can use this really any time of year. Students illustrate a prompt on a little foldable card on their desk, and then you walk around and essentially you discuss what they've drawn on their cards. Choral translation is one of my all-time favorites. Simple simple reading activities. You read in the target language, the students translate to the shared language of the classroom. Moving right along, we're gonna do Chunky Monkey, which is one of my all-time faves. It's from Senor Woolley. They have chunks of the language from the lyrics, and you're gonna play the song for them, or read a selection to them, and they're going to do sequencing with those chunks. It's very hands-on. I love it. 6 is Details, and I shared about this in my 30 activities video for world language teachers, but it's fantastic because it's a lot of listening. So students are going to do a quick, short, timed retell of a story, and then you are going to speak details from the story, and if they hear it and see the detail in their retell that they've written, they are going to highlight that detail and then they'll get a point. So this is kind of an all-encompassing activity because it's reading, because you're telling a story, you're writing, but then it is listening as they're listening to you tell the details. Number 7 is dictation. This one is super simple. You read a sentence, students write the sentence, and they're trying to do their best to be as accurate as possible in spelling and grammatical choices. Number 8 is Edpuzzle. If you are not familiar with Edpuzzle, you are missing out, but basically what it is you put a video in there, and as they're watching the video, you add questions for them to answer as they are watching the video. Interpretive quick quizzes from Senora Chase. These are like all-time go-to fave, especially when combined with that novice listening library that I was talking about. Essentially, students listen to or watch the media that you've presented to them, and then they respond as much as they are able. So in these interpretive quick quizzes, Senora Chase has built in this level of differentiation. It's fantastic. And you can use them with any listening activity or, interpretive quick quizzes, so you can do them with reading as well. Fortune tellers, or I don't know what you called them growing up, but we called them cootie catchers. La Secundaria, Jade has a blog post where she talks about this, but essentially the students are talking to each other, listening to each other, and then using I'm doing this with my hands because it's like that thing, the foldy thing. I'll put a picture here so you can tell what I'm talking about. But it's a great listening activity between students. Human bingo is another great one for students to practice listening and speaking together. The students walk around, intermingle, ask each other questions, listen to their answers, and record the responses on their bingo sheet. In the cards is a Senor Woolley activity. Basically what it is you have a bunch of cards that have pictures from a story laid out in front of them. The teacher speaks and reads descriptions, and they choose the card that matches the description that they hear. You could also do that with a pre-recorded thing ahead of time. If you are enjoying this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up so YouTube knows you like it, and let's keep going. This next one is from Spanish Plans, and he just calls it, "Is this the video?" So students listen to a song, and afterwards, muted, you play a music video or a couple different clips of different music videos, and they have to pick which music video they think goes with the sound that they listen to. Letra Equivocada is from Spanish Plans also. Basically, they listen and they have lyrics in front of them, but some of the lyrics, as you might guess, are wrong. So as they're listening and following along, they mark the ones that are incorrect and don't match what they hear. Marker partner is a really fun one. You've probably heard of it before. Teacher is calling out statements or facts or whatever information, details from a story. If the statement is true, they grab the marker. If the statement is not true, they don't grab the marker, but they're doing listening practice because they are listening to the statements. Matamoscas, this is one of my favorite ones. You can do this as a whole class, you can do this in groups, you can do this in teams. I like to do this in pairs because I feel like they're a lot more hands-on, they're a lot less waiting for their turn, but essentially you say something or describe an image, they have to be the first to smack that image to get the point. Movie talk is a great listening activity. You're probably sick to death of hearing me talk about movie talk because I love it so much, but when you describe that clip in comprehensible language for your students, they are listening. Well, we hope they're listening. Take it or leave it. We do our best, whatever, okay? But movie talk, you're describing, they're listening, ideally. Another great one for music videos, if you're listening to a song, is called Musical Bingo, and this one they watch the video and they're gonna play bingo with items from, or scenes, right, things from the video that they're watching. Offside from Senor Woolley, you are gonna speak descriptions or statements, and students are going to move to the side of the room to show if they agree or disagree, or like before or after, or true and false, right? Essentially, students need to be moving to other sides of the room depending on what they hear. Pareja Mentirosa is one of my all-time favorite reading activities. You can do it as teacher, whole class, or you can do students paired together, but essentially everybody has access to a reading. One person is reading, they're reading out loud, but while they are reading, they are making intentional changes to the reading. So they might add a no, or they might change a name or change a detail. And as they make those changes and the students who are listening hear a change, they're going to say mentirosa or pareja mentirosa, depending on what you want them yelling across the room. Picture talk is another great one. It's just like movie talk, only you use pictures instead. I've talked about this one before, but again, you're describing something in comprehensible language and hoping that your students are listening. Pop up is from Senora Chase. They listen to a sentence and students pop up to translate it first. Quite the character is from Senora Woolley. They listen and then they pick the photo that matches the description that you called out. You can do this with characters that are being described from a video that you're working with, or you could do this with scenes, like if you did a read and draw activity, now you're following up by using the illustrations that you had your students draw. Running dictation and reverse running dictation. I know we already mentioned dictation, but this one is student to student as opposed to teacher to students for listening, but they are listening and then going to find a chunk of language and returning. Sound effect reading is a super simple one, but it's awesome. So basically what you're going to do is you are going to read a selection for your students, and you're going to have different students whose jobs are to make sound effects at certain words. So for example, you're reading a story that has a cat in the story. Every time this student hears the word gato, they're going to go meow, and they're going to meow like a cat. Or anytime they hear the word quien, they're going to go hoo, hoo, like an owl. That's a very common one to do, right? But essentially you've given student jobs that are related to words in the story that they're going to hear often. Sound effects. Speed date translate is like volleyball reading, but there's a rotating timed element. Again, this is a listing one where the students are providing the listing for each other, but it also involves a lot of movement and a lot of rereading, so that's one of my favorites. Strip or rip bingo, depending on your situation and your scenario. So you're playing bingo with a single strip of paper, so there's 5 boxes on it, and maybe you're reading a selection or you're saying different statements from a story, and as the students hear, they're going to rip off different pieces of their strip until they can rip the last remaining square and win. TeachVid is one of my all-time favorite tech tools because it was developed by somebody who gets language acquisition. So basically what you do with TeachVid is you give it a video, or you pick one of the videos that's already done, and then your students are going to interact with the video over and over and over again with different chunks of the language that they hear in that video in different ways. It basically like auto creates 30 different activities you can do with one video without you having to make 30 different activities. Gold. It is gold. You have to check it out. Okay, the last one I want to share with you today is Viva la Musica. It's from Senora Woolley. Basically, they're going to listen to the music and they're just going to highlight words or phrases that they know. Super easy recognition activity. Okay, that was a lot. Like I said, 30 activities you can do with listening, but I promised that I was going to give you a way to organize them all, so it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I heard this really cool activity and I wanted to try it. Gone from your brain the second you start a lesson plan, right? We've all been there. First off, I wanted to remind you that if you want any more information about any of the activities that I just mentioned, right? I gave you a really short summary of each, and you're like, wait, but how do you, what? If you want more information about any of them, drop me a comment below and let me know. I'm happy to help you out. But I also wanted to let you know that I have a blog post with a spreadsheet of all of these activities, plus like 70 more, where there's a link to the activity, the name, a short description, and a tutorial for more information, all in one place. I think it's pretty darn handy for when you're lesson planning and you feel stuck. You can just open up the spreadsheet and be like, that's what I'm gonna do. Easy. So again, I will link to that in the description below. Please remember to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, click subscribe, and ring that bell so you get notified of all new content I create for you in the future. If you enjoyed this video, I'm gonna go ahead and recommend this one to you. It's really similar to this, a bunch of really rapid fire activity ideas. So if you're feeling stuck lesson planning, or if you're like, kind of in that doldrum period of the school year, this is the video that I would recommend you watch next. I'll put it on the screen for you here. Okay, got it? All right, cool. I'll see you in that one.